Hey guys, I just wanted to do my review of The Flash, Season 3, Episode 1, Flashpoint. So, the season premiere, it follows a similar format to last year's season premiere in that it doesn't take place like right after the last shot of the season finale. It starts out with the basically starts out with Barry at Jitters, like trying to work up the courage to ask Iris out, which is it's a little bit bizarre since he has memories of her in the original timeline. So you figured it's like it wouldn't be that hard to do that, but then of course he sees news of Kid Flash going to fight the rival in Central City, and he shows up on the scene, and the rival is able to throw lightning like Barry and as a means to attack the cops, and like shoots lightning at Barry so it distracts Kid Flash to the point where he has to move Barry out of the way, and the rival escapes. I'll say this, I like the rival. He seems like he's a pretty cool villain, although his costume totally sucks. But if anybody who's familiar with Flash mythology, like, the Flash is a legacy character, so every version of the Flash has their own Reverse Flash. Barry had Eobard Thawne, Wally had Hunter Zolomon, Bart Allen, Barry's grandson, had Inertia, who was also a descendant in the Thawne line, and Jay Garrick had the Rival. But given how the writers have switched them all around, he's basically the arch enemy, obviously, for Wally West. Although it kind of blows my mind that Barry could not. You think it would be a situation of it takes one to know one, and he wouldn't realize that the guy who has the same height, a similar voice, although it's blurred out and his face is blurred, that he would be able to suspect or at least recognize this Wally West as Kid Flash. But he doesn't. It's not until he witnesses another fight between Wally and the Rival, and in which he's trying to use his tornado, spins his hands to create a tornado to catch him in his hands. But because he's losing his memories, he's also losing some of his abilities as well, at least how to be more versatile with his speed. So he ends up landing in a dumpster, and that's how he unmasked Wally. The thing I like about this episode, I'll go into my positives are, one is the scene where Barry does ask Iris out, and they have this little moment where they're reminiscing about their time in grade school, and he mentions this, and she says this line where it says, "You're cute, Barry Allen, but you just need to talk a little bit slower." And it was nice to see that kind of chemistry from, reminds how strong the chemistry is between the two actors, and you can see, and just shows that they can be intrinsically attracted to one another, and not have to have external circumstances like a tsunami about to destroy the city in an alternate timeline, or living under the same roof, or Iris is finding out oh, I'm married to this guy in the future in an alternate Earth, so what the fuck, I'll give it a shot. Which is kind of how I felt about how they're gonna start the relationship in season 2. But anyway, and the thing I also liked, another scene I liked, is when they were about to go on their lunch date, and they basically just flipped the script and had it's the love interest who had to pull the flimsy excuses when trouble's going down in the city. Is I gotta run. And of course Barry goes to check it out, and that's where that scene where he tries to catch Kid Flash. And when he takes him back to Wally takes Barry back to his hideout, and it turns out that Iris is also working. They have this their brother. Wally and Iris are a brother-sister team. They're essentially the Team Flash of this Flashpoint timeline. And basically, since Iris is also still working as a reporter at Central City Picture News, she uses her intel to provide her brother with crimes that's going on throughout the city. And this is something I like that I feel like they didn't. This is like one of the few episodes I've seen where it's like Iris has been fully utilized, and this is something I guess like Candace Patton was pushing for, and like the writer said that she was going to be doing more of in season 2, but it was those instances were few and far between, which is Iris having her ear to the street and being able to provide that dynamic for Team Flash in the previous timeline. So it was nice to see it used at least here. So when they realized that, Barry says he wants to help them stop the rival, they end up going to Cisco, and Flashpoint Cisco is basically this rich asshole billionaire who developed this tech app where he made so much money off of it that he was able to buy Star Labs from Harrison Wells. I'm not 100% sure if there was still like a particle accelerator explosion. I mean, it sounds like it was implied, or at least like more low key, since Wally said like he got struck by lightning when he was drag racing, and the chemicals in his car mixed with the lightning, and he was in a coma for 9 months, like Barry was, and even it's like the news and and Iris and Barry's call him Kid Flash, even though the running gag is that he hates that name. He just wants to be called the Flash, as some of the cops call him, which is pretty funny. And Cisco is this like rich billionaire. It's like he was basically just kind of like this stuck up and didn't want to get involved in heroics, and he makes this reference about not wanting to get a vibrating hand through his chest from an evil speedster. And Barry brings up a memory about how he helped his brother with his newspaper route to help him provide money for him, and says like you're meant to do good. But a trend throughout the episode is that every time Barry talks to one of his old friends or a member of the cast, he basically starts losing memories of them from the original timeline, and that's where he goes to confront Eobard Thawne. Now Thawne, they do a flashback to the night that Barry went back in time to stop him from killing his mother, and right after that he basically dragged Eobard Thawne through the wormhole back to 2016 and has been keeping him in a warehouse in a little prison cell, which is somewhat similar to the prison cells that Zoom had on Earth 2, and he's been able to dampen his speed. Barry's dampened Thawne's speed somehow. And then Thawne keeps chastising him about the changes to the timeline is going to be the end of both of them, even though it just kind of falls on deaf ears with Barry, just because of the fact that, well, one, Thawne's messing with the timeline is what caused a lot of the events of seasons 1 and 2. And of course, Barry's parents are still alive. Cisco's rich. Iris is, still working at Central City. Iris is happy. Wally's the Flash. Caitlin works as a eye doctor for children. And I'll get into more of that later. So basically, he didn't listen to Eobard, and he realizes that, and when they both start discussing why Eobard is not losing his memories aren't being affected by the change to the timeline, he starts laughing his ass off and realizing that because Barry's been using his powers and Thawne hasn't, that the former is losing his memories much faster, and Thawne tries to convince him, you gotta let me go back in time to that night and let me kill your mother. Of course, Barry refuses, and so he tries to get Team Flash together, and he's able to find Caitlin, who, like I said, was working as an eye doctor, and she comes up with the idea of using the cameras around the city for tracking speedsters to track the rival. Barry explains to at least Cisco and the West siblings about how he created the Flashpoint timeline, Iris realizes that she believes him just because she says when he first met him that she's never said yes to a stranger who's like asked her out, and Barry's the first, and she says she's had this happy life, but she realizes that something's always been missing until he met Barry, and realizes that it's love. They're kind of like they're like destined to be together regardless of what timeline or alternate Earths they're in. And so Barry accompanies Kid Flash to fight the rival in a 2-on-1 fight. They said that they try to come up with a plan of like flanking him, but Wally just goes in head first because he's kind of like this headstrong and reckless, kind of like how Barry was, even more so. Well, he's kind of Barry to some extent still is, but how Barry was like in the season 1 and like beats the crap out of the rival, and is like, but then the rival gets up and basically impales Wally with. It was like a piece, like a wooden. It looked like a broom, because just by the way, like he threw it on the ground and the sound effect it made. And so Wally's out for the count, and so instead of rushing Wally away from the scene, the Flash fights the rival. He really gets the upper hand, but he starts losing more of his memories, and so including like, specifically how some of his abilities, and so then the rival gets the upper hand, and they've been able to create like 2 cyclones. Not unlike the cyclone that Clyde Martin created in the pilot that was supposed to be a callback, even to the point where Cisco says he's like some kind of weather wizard. And then a pep talk from Iris has an effect on him, saying, instead of just saying like "Run, Barry, run," he just says, "This is who you are the Flash." He actually recovers the memories he lost of the abilities, of some of his abilities, and he's able to run in the opposite direction, dissipate the cyclones, and then knock the rival to the ground, who they reveal is Edward Clarice, just like in the comic books. And of course Barry's about to get also attacked by Edward Clarice when he turns his back to him until Joe shows up and shoots him, who in this timeline was basically this lazy drunk who was in danger of losing his job and had a strained relationship with his kids. They didn't really explain that, but he ends up but because Barry's had such an interest in him and trying to like help him out is why he shows up on the scene and shoots Clarice, which is kind of a callback to how he shot Clyde Martin in the pilot, and also it reminded me of how Thomas Wayne's Batman shot the Reverse Flash in the Flashpoint Paradox movie. And so they tend to Wally, they bring him back to Remote Industries, and formerly Star Labs, and he's not, he didn't, Barry and Iris said he's supposed to be healing, but he's not, but Caitlin says he's not, and just says, "I'm sorry." And this is the part of it that kind of pisses me off, which is like, it's the fact that from all the other things I just mentioned in this video earlier, everybody seems to have a pretty happy life, sans Joe, but what happened, but the fact that it's like what happens to Wally just seems to be enough for Barry to like, okay, I got to release the Reverse Flash, and let him go back to that night and kill my mom, but because like, the side effects of the timeline are getting worse. It's the Reverse Flash that has this parallel where he's now dragging Barry back through the wormhole back to the past, and so the season 2 finale, Barry and past Reverse Flash start to vanish when the second Reverse Flash appears and just use the recycled footage to stab Barry's mom. And you see this whole montage of like season 1 and 2 footage, and you think everything's back to normal, but then the other plot hole is that Reverse Flash brings Barry back to the porch the night that he left to go change the timeline, and then he heads off the parts unknown where he says, "Well, I guess everything's back to normal for me anyways. For you, I guess you're going to have to wait and find out." He goes to hug Joe and Wally. The only two people left at that family dinner, And when Barry asks where's Iris, Joe gets upset, and Wally asks, why would you bring that up? You know they don't talk, right? And then Barry just becomes horrified and realizes that's probably one of many negative changes to the timeline, even though he was trying to repair it. And that's the thing that kind of bothers me, is the fact that I know this was supposed to be smaller in scale and more personal. I knew it was never going to be like the comic books or the movie because, you know, of the budgeting reasons. They don't want to, I guess, like, the showrunners don't want to kind of just blow their load. And, like, when they have, like, crossover stuff coming up and the other shows are doing their own thing. But it just seems like I never felt like they were, and the more I think about it, it just feels like they never gave us like a really good enough reason for why Barry had to change anything. The Flashpoint timeline just seemed better to me for the most part. I mean, just because like the West family has become more dysfunctional doesn't mean like, I mean, that's something that can be fixed with like an AA meeting and like family therapy. You don't need to like let his family die again just to like fix everything. And it just feels like the fact that it's like Barry and Iris seem to imply that Wally was able to recover from injuries like that in the past, and it was like this particular instant that he didn't. It just felt like a contrived coincidence that in order not to make Barry look selfish for changing the timeline for a second episode in a row, where for the most part he did look selfish because he was basically just changing the timeline just so he can hold on to his memories and his powers. So it just seems like the writers didn't like care enough about the storyline to the point where it just almost felt like borderline bastardization, just as a means to an end to like create manufactured drama for both like Cisco and Iris and the rest of the cast, as applied in the trailer for next week.
I made a big mistake. I created another timeline.
So what changed?
You were acting oddly.
What's wrong with you?
There is something not right about you.
There's a whole new guy that you didn't even know about?
And he doesn't like me very much.
Oh, that's impossible. You're like pudding. Everybody likes pudding.
I screwed up everybody's life. I don't want to be there for me. Just try to understand.
You need to tell me what is going on, Barry, right now.
The Flash, all new this Tuesday at 8/7 Central on the CW.
Okay, so Cisco's in grief support for reasons. I guess something happened to his brother, and I guess like I mentioned, Iris and Joe are estranged for reasons unknown. It just feels like it's almost like they're just doing this for like manufactured drama, and I don't know whether to see this as like lazy writing or like an interesting development.
Mistake. I created another timeline.
Flash? There are consequences to time travel. The gods and men have extraordinary abilities. Greetings, Earthlings.
This kid now really talks like that.
Listen to him, not so.
At least there's an improvement in this timeline. I've kissed Iris twice, and I've managed to erase both times from existence.
I hate when that happens.
You guys on the train?
Let's train. Speedster's time. You gotta think, anticipate.
What kind of hero are you gonna be? Are you just gonna take a role for every time we make a mistake? Or live with them and move forward?
Barry, I'm falling asleep here. Can you level up or something?
You've always been my hero. I'm gonna show you who's the fastest man alive.
There's no one who can stop us now.
There's one person who can. The Flash.
So this is my thing. I don't know. I feel like this, in terms of like a good first impression, I don't know what direction the season's going to be going in. I'm not sure if I'm going to like everything they're going to be doing. Because it's just like, I mean, certain things I like Tom Cavanaugh's been like a funny guy, so like bringing his more humorous side to a role. But this whole thing about when the past is broken, repair the present is what kind of bothers me. And hold on. But at least they're bringing Jesse back and Earth 2 Harrison Wells back for a couple of episodes, and there was some footage of, you know, Captain Cold teaming up with the new Rogues. Like I think it's supposed to be like the top, and I don't know if it's Mirror Master or somebody else. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I just felt like, at least like this first episode was a kind of a letdown, and I don't know how I'm gonna. And I'm not really feeling like I have a clear direction where the season's going, or like how much confidence in it. How do you guys feel about the first episode? How do you guys feel about this footage? Are you excited? I mean, I'm excited for certain aspects, but not so much others. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.